So baseball's been around for a pretty long time, and growing up for me, it was kind of one of my all-time favorite sports. And pretty at least recently, as of last year, had the fortunate privilege to go visit a very historic ballpark with my wonderful wife and family. Um, and that ballpark was Fenway Park. Um, it's been around for 160 years, actually, probably a little longer now. But when we had gone to visit, um, the ballpark had been around for that long, and it's pretty amazing to me because um, just the atmosphere of being there, the people, um, their fans that they have for Boston, it's something else, and the atmosphere, you feel the presence of those good old times, for sports, especially in the world of baseball, where outside the ballpark, you get that fanfare, you get that feeling of the history, um, of the old times for baseball. A lot of the stuff, it's not a traditional, so it's not really a traditional ballpark because of the fact that it's been around for so long. And I say that because you know how if you go to most normal baseball fields like T-Mobile T-Mobile Park, I really hate saying that. I hate saying that name. To me, that the Seattle ballpark will always be home to Safeco for me and my wife. But due to contract reasons, they had to get a new name, and unfortunately, it's T-Mobile Park now. So, but when you go to like any of the newer traditional ballparks, it's a different feeling because it's you don't really have, yes, you have your team shops in most of the areas that are close by, but when you go to Boston, it's this whole other it's this whole other level. And um I was really excited to be there and just to feel that presence, and just to feel the atmosphere, because the outside of the ballpark, you could go around and you had your team shop, you had all your other fanfares in the vicinity, but it was just you could literally walk the streets, and those same streets was the attendance to get inside the ballpark. There wasn't these normal traditional, okay, everybody's lined up um outside the entrances, and you go in like normal. This was one of those, um outside like the, um I want to say like their VIP type, um their that section. I'm not entirely sure what it was, at the time, but basically you went through the gates and you were still in the streets, but it was still, they had stuff going on the outside. They had entertainers. You had your street side food. Like, we're talking, hot dog stands, food stands, and there's even memorabilia stands that are just outside the stadium that are open to the public to go, obviously eat or buy merchandise or whatever. But it just, it was different. And um I'll be honest, for myself especially, when we the first day that we got to the ballpark, I honestly broke down in that, because for me, I enjoy the sport of baseball. I've always enjoyed it. I played it for 20 plus years, and I've even worked for a baseball organization, before they moved. And having the opportunity to go such a to such a historical ballpark it really just it felt unreal that I was actually there, um, at such a legendary park that's been around for so long. And I broke down. It was it was overwhelming to actually be there. And I hope many of you will have the opportunity, if you enjoy baseball, to go experience it for yourself and to take a tour as well. um, and I'll have some pictures here to show you guys. um, just I don't have many, unfortunately. My other phone that had most of the pictures from our trip got wiped when my phone crashed, so I don't have those, unfortunately. But I do still have some that I was able to find from our trip. And it was one it our trip started off kind of rough because we got to Boston, and to get our rental car and everything. Well, the rental car people ended up telling us that, hey, by the way, you still owe this amount of money, um, even though we had already paid for all of it ahead of time. And they're like, no, 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 no. There's still more that you need to pay before you can actually take the car. Well, um, in the event of our cards getting shut down because we're on the opposite side of the country, gonna be buying a bunch of stuff. We didn't want our bank to basically be like, hey, is this actually you? And then them shutting our cards down because they're like, well, this can't be right. You're supposed to be here, but it says you're all the way over in Boston buying a bunch of stuff. And so, to kind of counteract that, we had pulled a bunch of cash and whatnot for our trip. Well, they weren't going to accept cash for us to pay for our car the rest of the way, apparently, for the amount that we had apparently owed. And so I want to say it was probably about midnight over there. And um, everything's closed, basically, because it's so late. And it was like one of the last flights coming in for the day. It took us a while just to get a bus to get over to the rental place. And then we finally get over there, and it's like, oh, so yeah, the only ATM that accepts your card is back at the terminal. So we had to wait for another bus. Got on the bus, get back. Well, the one ATM at the time, that before we actually found what we needed to find, was all the way inside the gate check, the security check. Well, the problem with that, was there was no access to get in there, and the only way of actually getting in there was to go through the wrong way, which you're not supposed to do because, well, they'll think you're up to no good. Well, that ended up being a bust, so I'm breaking down because I'm getting super frustrated because I feel like I'm letting, we're getting off to a bad start for the trip because, well, now, because of all that, I felt like I was letting my wife down, I was letting my parents down, and that, and it was complete chaos. We finally managed to, we figured, for the heck of it, because we were both working at the time, we were hoping that we got paid. So I checked our account, and thankfully, this is like about hour and a half later with still no car. And thankfully we'd gotten paid, so we're like, all right, we're going back over now. We ended up saving money too, because the lady that helped us at the car rental was trying to sell us this warranty in case we got into an accident or whatever the heck happened. So that way, if the car was covered, we were covered, and we're like, we don't really need to pay this much more for something that we're not gonna be. We're only there for a few days because we're just there to go to a few baseball games, and we ended up saving money from another guy that helped us. We ended up finally getting our car and experiencing the nightlife of Boston, which is actually pretty pretty at night. But the next day, we got to the ballpark actually fairly early because of the way that the park is and how old it is and where it's located. You have to get there extremely early. Parking is beyond limited. There's like, without paying, I want to say like a couple $100 for like decent parking that you're not kind of out in the middle of nowhere, or parked on like the side of the road. I think for the game day parking, we ended up paying $70. $70 to park. Kind of outrageous, but understandable because parking is extremely limited. Like, we're talking maybe 100 cars, 100 cars or so being able to actually park in the area, just because of the way everything is structured. But get to the ballpark, soaking it all in, taking lots of pictures, and just feeling the history and the legacies just oozing off the building. And again, I ended up breaking down because I'm just in disbelief that I'm actually there. I'm at Fenway Park, and just it was truly something else. It was a terrible game, but because we got crushed that night, like it wasn't even close. But nonetheless, like, we still, regardless, we absolutely enjoyed it, every last moment of it, just because we're there to have fun. The next day we ended up taking a tour, and then next day we took a tour of the stadium, which was absolutely amazing. There's seriously so much history within the stadium, and we had the opportunity to even go up onto the Green Monster, which is the giant wall out in left field, which is like the most iconic feature of that stadium.
Amazing, because even
we got seating, nice little insight on the stadium too, as
seating.
to
So
most of the bricking is from the original stadium.
The problem being, of course,
they've had to make some changes over time, but
the seats are a little bit uncomfortable,
still such an amazing historic place.
Most seats that you see at most ballparks that you would go to nowadays. But nonetheless, the fact that some of those seats still exist and are still used at the stadium is amazing. Something else too. So the next day as well, after the tours, the second game that we went to that day, we were in the outfield for our seats, and even though it wasn't really that warm of a day, it was still very sunny, which made it feel warmer than what it was according to the temperature. The other part, I would recommend it, and something that we both learned after the fact is, definitely bring some sunscreen along, if you plan to be in the outfield or just in any part of that stadium where it's going to be mostly sunny and you're going to be out in the sun for a few hours and whatnot, because we both got very, very sunburnt. It was excruciating. Like, my face was very red, because we didn't really think that it would be that bad. Our arms were scorched, to the point where was peeling almost the next day. It felt like. Um, we also um, got to experience something that was very bad, and I it does suck for anyone to have this happen too. So this older lady was walking up the stairs, and they don't really have like those arm rails, just because there's not really a way to put an arm rail in that part of the stadium without really cutting off the entire walkway. So there's no like railing to kind of like grab onto. Well, this lady, not sure what happened still, but it's like she blacked out or she missed a step and she fell backwards and managed to hit her head. I think like the same section that we were at, or just the section below, but like you heard it, and it was pretty bad. She came to a couple different times, but for the most part, she was out and had no idea where she was at. Um, and it was bad. It was pretty scary to think that you just barely miss a step or slip up just barely, especially in a part at a part where there's not really anything to grab a hold of, and you're falling backwards, a few flights, um, and I'm pretty sure she ended up okay, but um, just it was a sickening thud on the steps, and it's a scary thought because her husband was there not too far away as well, didn't know what happened at the time, and so he was freaking out, and a lot of other people too were kind of freaking out, but in the end it did get resolved, and again, I believe she ended up being okay, but nonetheless it was still a scary thought there. um, but yeah, my wife and I, we wanna go back to Boston at some point. Um, it's definitely something that we want to do again. Kind of be able to experience Boston a little bit more and some more of the historical impacts and just some of the historical stuff that there is to do around that wonderful city, and just be able to experience it all, and take it in some more. Um, but from a baseball perspective, we have plans to at some point to go to Wrigley Field, which is the next oldest ballpark, uh, the next oldest ballpark stadium um, that there is in the majors for baseball, and we want to go there hopefully before anything majorly happens to the stadium, because it's very old as well. It's old enough to the point where electrical. I remember reading something about there being some electrical issues. There was, um, seating issues, kind of similar to Boston. Older seats and all that fun stuff. And it's just we want to go to all the ballparks at some point if we can, because there are some pretty historical ballparks out there that you definitely should go experience and just check it out. Like, even if you don't necessarily like baseball that much, just check it out, because there's one way or another there's history surrounding that ballpark, and that even if it's not from a baseball perspective, there's always something to those stadiums, and I think it'd be something really awesome for you folks to check out, and maybe you'll enjoy it. And if you're a baseball fanatic, you'll really enjoy the history. Um, Not only Fenway and hopefully Wrigley as well. Um, not don't really care much for the Yankees, but definitely would have at least liked to have the chance to go to old Yankee Stadium and experience that. But um, Yeah, definitely would love to go back at some point, and hopefully, you guys can somehow relate to, especially the sunburn type issue. But just if there's something that you enjoy doing, or um, that you enjoy, whether it's a sport or art or whatever, you should at least try and go out there and experience it, um, if you've got the chance. Because you might never have that chance if it goes away to experience it. So if you don't get to it before it goes away, you'll be kicking yourself, for the rest of the time that you have. And um, you know, I'm definitely glad that I had the chance to go experience it with my wife, and to experience it with my parents, and that who enjoy baseball, as much as I do. And um, yeah, thank you guys, and hope you guys enjoy.